Good morning, Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study of the book of Ecclesiastes, and when we left last time, we were with Solomon in a dark place. He's let God in to the equation at the end of chapter 2, and therefore he sees light, some light. He sees that God has given us gifts and that we can take joy in those gifts, that doing good is better than doing bad, and that doing good is itself a gift from God. He's looked at the circle, this closed loop, and not seen a big zero, but seen a circle, a beautiful shape that God has created, and has seen in it perfect balance that God has established in this closed loop of time under the sun. But now he's despairing of humanity as a species not worth saving. He mentioned eternity, that there are things after humanity, after a person dies, after humanity is gone, but we don't know what it is, and it's been kept from us. This despairing for humanity is certainly something that Moses himself indulged in Psalm 90, so I would like for you to read that. But Psalm 90 is quoted in Psalm 103 by David, and it really is an answer to David. An answer to Moses in his despair of humanity in Psalm 90, and also an answer to Solomon. If Solomon had known this song that his father had wrote, and why would he draw these false conclusions? They are true about sinful people, but he seems to be despairing for the entire species. David says in Psalm 103, I just want to read verse 14 first. He says, God knows our frame. He remembers that we're dust. He knows who we are. He knows who we are. And he knows who we are on this earth. He knows that we are dust. Solomon says, we're dust. We're from dust. We go back to dust, just like the animals. And David uses that same phrase. God knows that we're dust. But then he says in verses 2 through 4, bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his benefits. He forgives your iniquity, heals your diseases, redeems your life from the pit, crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, satisfies you with good so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. God knows who we are. Everything you say about us is true. Moses, Solomon, and God knows it. You didn't discover this. God knows it. He knows it. Of course he knows it. He made us. And he still loves us. And we don't have that deep understanding of the love of God. Without trying to be an armchair psychologist, maybe he's struggling to understand the love of God because he didn't feel the love of his own father. I don't know. But let's read chapter 4, and we're going to read verses 1 through 3, because he's still in this dark, dark place. Again I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold the tears of the oppressed. They had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors there was power, and there was no one to comfort them. And I thought, the dead who are already dead are more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. This is a dark place, and it's a place it's a dark place that Job goes to. In Job 3, the very first verse says, Job opens his mouth to curse his own life in the day of his birth. And then he says, may the day be cursed that I was born, when it was said a man-child has been born. And it's better to be dead than alive, if you continue to read, but it's better still not to have been born at all. Well, we don't have that choice. Children are a gift from God, Psalm 127. And and Solomon himself in this book, at the end, when he says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, says that your spirit will return to God who gave it. And so even he understands that we don't get to choose whether we're born or not, and that we are born when the Spirit of God, when God gives part of his Spirit, gives our spirit to the world. by placing it inside the human frame, a human frame that he himself, Psalm 139, David wrote this, forms. You formed me in my mother's womb. You shaped my inward parts. So we don't have a choice. And it's not better to be dead than alive. It's not better not to have existed, because God is the one who gives us existence, and because God is the one who gives us life. What is better is to be at home with God after we have existed under the sun, but he's not allowed that to be part of the equation yet. But things are going to look up a bit. I do want to, before we leave, notice this, that verses 1 through 3, really going back to those last verses of chapter 4, are motivated not by self-pity or despair at the human species so much as by empathy, as by compassion. And if you didn't get that in those 3 verses, just the phrase that is repeated, there is no one to comfort them. There's no one to comfort them. It's almost like that, that vision that Marley gives to Scrooge before the 3 spirits come, where he looks out and he sees all the suffering, at his doorstep, literally at his doorstep, and the dead trying to make a difference now that they understand things, and they're unable to. And that is the worst torment of all, that they can't help. It's the torment of the rich man had when he knew that he couldn't help his brothers. And so this feeling comes from empathy. It comes from a good place. It comes from compassion, from that pure feeling that we're supposed to have for each other, that Jesus always has for us. But because he has not allowed eternity in, that empathy leads him to despair. We're going to have more light. It's going to come quickly. We're going to pick up with verse 4 next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.